Everyone loves a sunny day, but what would happen if the sun got a little too close to us? What would happen to the solar system if the sun ended up destroying the Earth? A sunny day makes our summers brighter, keeps us warm, and gives us fresh tans, but even then, we take a lot of measures to protect ourselves from the harm caused by it. We wear sunscreen and hats to protect from UV rays, sunglasses to protect our vision when it's too bright out. With all its glory comes its problems, and today we're exploring everything that could go wrong with the sun. To start, let's talk about the biggest issue of them all, one that we know is going to happen eventually. The sun is expected to explode within the next 8 billion years, but what if it happened tomorrow? Well, if you have any plans for the next 24 hours, you might want to call them off. This is What If, and here's what would happen if the sun exploded tomorrow. That star at the center of our solar system, that super hot ball of plasma that gives us heat and energy, and amazing complexions. Well, it's a ticking time bomb. The sun is 4.5 billion years old, but it's only expected to last about another 5 billion years. After that, the sun will expand, becoming a red giant. Then, it will shrink to become a white dwarf, a dying star, cooling for the next several billion years. Of course, we'll all be long gone before any of that happens, but still, can you imagine what it would be like to watch the sun blow up before your very eyes? With a name like supernova, you'd think that a solar explosion would be the most magnificent fireworks show the world has ever seen. But in reality, you likely wouldn't see anything. The sun is 150 million kilometers away from Earth, and it takes 8 minutes for light from the sun to reach us. And while that may seem super far away, in supernova terms, we don't stand a chance. For Earth to be completely safe from a supernova, we'd need to be at least 50 to 100 light years away. But the good news is that if the sun were to explode tomorrow, the resulting shockwave wouldn't be strong enough to destroy the whole Earth. Only the side facing the sun would boil away instantly. The lucky other half would experience a rise in temperature that would be 15 times hotter than the sun's current surface temperature, and permanent darkness. And without the sun's mass keeping us in orbit, Earth would likely start floating off into space, while its remaining inhabitants desperately struggle to stay alive. There is a chance that our planet could lock into orbit around another star that might provide the same light and heat as our sun, but by the time that happened, we'd all be long gone. If we knew in advance the day that the sun would explode, then we could buy ourselves as many as 1,000 years of time, provided we had the resources to sustain ourselves for that long. And we could. Just a few meters below the ground you walk on, the Earth is maintaining a temperature of about 17 degrees. So if we had enough time to prepare, civilization could continue to live by moving underground into a huge network of fortified bunkers. Within a week after the explosion, the surface temperature on Earth would drop to minus 18 degrees. Within a year, temperatures would plummet to about minus 73 degrees. At this point, the oceans would begin to freeze from the top down. Within 1,000 years, Earth's atmosphere would freeze and collapse, leaving anything left on the surface exposed to cosmic radiation and meteor impacts. Hopefully, by that point, we'd have found ourselves a new home. The good news is that if the sun were to explode, and it will eventually happen, it wouldn't happen overnight. When the sun does die, it will be a long, slow, arduous process taking place over billions of years. The sun will get hotter and brighter, and it will start to expand. During this process, it will lose its outer layers to the cosmos, leading to the creation of other stars and planets, in the same way that the violent burst of the Big Bang created Earth. Who knows? Maybe new life could form. Can you imagine another Earth? A new humanoid species? It's hard to predict how our galaxy might look billions of years from now, and it's especially hard to imagine our solar system without the great golden anchor that keeps us all together. But one day, in the very, very distant future, the sun will expand, and then it will shrink, maybe leaving room for a new star to take its place.
We all know that Earth is huge, but the sun is even huger. Is that a word? The size of the sun plays a crucial part in our solar system. It's so massive that the gravitational pull it exerts is the glue that keeps the entire solar system intact. It also controls our environment from 150 million kilometers away. Yeah, the sun's heat travels 150 million kilometers to make Earth a habitable zone for humans. Now, if Earth was the same size as the sun, well, this would be a problem. We'd run into quite a few issues. Who knows how the other planets would react, and chaos would ensue. Could we even survive on a planet that big? Would we experience another continental drift? Well, don't worry, we've got all the answers. Stay tuned to find out.
Trees are falling, ecosystems are collapsing, and our infrastructure is crumbling. Crops are failing, and water is scarce. Earth is becoming a dead planet. On the plus side, there's never been a better time to buy property. But who can think about real estate when they can't leave their own home, let alone get out of bed, let alone breathe? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Earth was as big as the sun. Everyone knows the sun is big. I mean, look at it. And that's just how big it looks from about 150 million kilometers away. Just imagine what it would look like if you were standing next to it. Never mind. The sun accounts for 98% of the mass of our entire solar system. And compared to the densest planet, which is our very own planet Earth, the sun is more than 1,000,000 times more massive. In fact, it would take roughly 1,300,000 planet Earths to fill the entire sun. But what if it only took one? Earth would be a very different place if it were the same size as the sun. Just imagine our whole planet's topography being stretched out. Continents would expand, providing much-needed relief in places where overpopulation inhibits the quality of life. And owning a nice plot of land might actually be more affordable than it is on today's planet Earth. But now we'd also have to consider that every body of water on our planet would have more area to cover. This means that lakes, rivers, and even the oceans would be shallower, making them more susceptible to evaporation and potentially drying out. Marine life would undoubtedly suffer since shallower water would gain more heat from the sun, jeopardizing sea creatures that need colder water to survive. With other smaller water sources beginning to dry up, wildlife on land might have to relocate or travel much farther for fresh water, which would also put them at risk. Us humans would be in an equally precarious position. Not only would we probably start fighting over the limited fresh water that's available, our food crop yields would also start shrinking. Food crops need a certain amount of soil to grow in and to absorb the nutrients they need. If our world was as big as the sun, then, like the water, our soil would have to be spread out to cover a much larger space. Less soil would mean less food, while the demand for food would stay the same. There's also another issue that we haven't considered, which, when we factor it in, makes life on Earth pretty much impossible. Earth being the same size as the sun is hard enough to imagine, but When you consider a sun-sized Earth having the same mass as the Sun, it doesn't only jeopardize our survival, it disrupts our entire solar system. Think about it. With the Earth as big as the Sun, you'd pretty much lose the Moon either way. But if a planet has more mass, it will also have a stronger gravitational pull. In this case, gravity on Earth would be 28 times as strong as it is now. We'll get to how this affects you in a moment, but first, let's look at the bigger picture. The reason why our solar system moves the way it does now is because the Sun's mass is so great. Its gravitational pull forces other planets into its orbit. The Sun currently has 98% of the mass in our entire solar system, but now the Sun and the Earth would each have 49% of the mass in our solar system. Would this result in some sort of binary system in which the Sun and the Earth orbited each other? How would this new rivalry affect the orbits of the other planets in our solar system? And would a significantly higher gravitational pull mean that Earth would get hit by a lot more asteroids? Well, there'd be a lot more to worry about than just asteroids. Our satellites would also probably crash down to Earth, while buildings and bridges would crumble and collapse under the increased gravitational pressure. Only thick trees that were low to the ground would remain standing, but it's unlikely that much else could shoulder the added weight. You would be significantly heavier, and you probably wouldn't be able to walk anywhere. Think about it. If you weigh 50 kilograms on Earth right now, it would feel like you weighed 1,400 kilograms on a sun-sized Earth. The cruel twist is that as gravity increases, time would slow down. So you might be able to live longer, but it would probably be a long life spent lying in bed with aches and pains. Luckily, we can wake up from this nightmare because the Earth will never be as big as the Sun. In fact, our planet is actually getting smaller. Our atmosphere leaks, and so we end up losing several hundred tons of mass to space every day. So take a nice deep breath and be glad it's that easy. It's not always a good idea to mess with proportions, and bigger definitely doesn't always mean better.
Okay, wow. I knew the Sun was big, but even I didn't realize that it was 1,000,000 times bigger than us. Think about eating a blueberry. It's so small that you probably wouldn't think twice about it. Well, yeah, same for us and the Sun. The Sun probably sees our planet as nothing more than a blueberry. Moist, blue, and delicious. So, if the Sun decided to swallow Earth the way you swallowed a blueberry, what would happen? I mean, I'm sure we wouldn't survive, but could a new form of life develop? Maybe Earth somehow mutates and comes out stronger than ever.
The Sun's core is shrinking. But as its core shrinks, the Sun itself grows larger. And it will continue to grow until one day, it engulfs the Earth. How long can you survive? What will happen to the oceans? And will other planets be affected? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Sun swallowed the Earth. Every 1 billion years, the Sun becomes 10% hotter. But here on What If, we're going to take billions of years and condense the action into 1 month. Get ready, because we're going to be moving really fast this time. Instead of 1 billion years, it would only take 4 days for the Sun to become 10% hotter. This means you'll see the Earth engulfed by the Sun in just 1 month. That is, if you're still around to witness the final event. On day 1, you'd be blissfully unaware of the tragedy about to befall Earth. Maybe it's a little hotter, but that's just weather. It happens. But by day 4, space agencies across the globe would be sounding the alarm bells. By this time, the sun would be about 10% brighter and hotter. And while 10% doesn't sound like a lot, it will be the beginning of the end for us. As the sun heats up, more and more water from Earth's surface will evaporate into the atmosphere. This will increase the greenhouse gas effect, causing global temperatures to skyrocket. All of a sudden, it will become very humid and very hot. But the sun's high-energy light would bombard the atmosphere, splitting those water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. Earth will begin to lose its water, and you won't be able to escape the lethal radiation on Earth's surface. If you want to survive, you'll have to go deep underground. But even under a protective layer of Earth's soil, you won't be safe for long. By day 16, the sun would be almost 40% brighter. Our planet's oceans will boil, and there won't be any moisture left in the atmosphere. The beautiful, lush Earth that you grew up on will become a hot, dry, barren rock. Around day 20, the sun would run out of hydrogen, so instead, it will start to burn helium in its core. The sun is now a red giant star and would expand rapidly while losing its mass. The sun's gravitational pull on Earth would be weakened, and our planet would begin to drift away from the expanding sun. But not far enough. According to researchers Klaus-Peter Schroeder and Robert C. Smith, the Earth would only have moved about 0.0002 astronomical units. An astronomical unit is the distance between Earth and the Sun. While Earth is moving away from the encroaching Sun, the red giant would grow up to 1.2 astronomical units in radius. The Sun would be larger than Earth's orbit. It would swallow the planet whole. Once it's inside the Sun's atmosphere, Earth would collide with particles of gas and spiral inward. And Earth wouldn't be the only casualty of the expanding Sun. Mercury and Venus would be vaporized. The rings of Saturn would melt. Pluto would become much warmer. And if there is a liquid surface and a thick atmosphere on this distant dwarf planet, it might even become inhabitable. Unfortunately, 30 days doesn't give the human race enough time to prepare for such a catastrophic event.
I don't know about you, but I've never been up in space. Because of that, I'm going to invite our senior aerospace correspondent, Rose, to take over. Rose?
Oh, hi everyone. Rose, the aerospace engineer here. When I was up in space, I was terrified of colliding with things. Asteroids, planets, secret space monsters, you name it. But let me tell you, nothing up there is scarier than the sun. Nothing. You probably love the sun, I mean, who doesn't? From Earth, it doesn't look like a big ball of fire waiting to burst any minute. The only thing about as scary as the sun is falling into a black hole. I'm getting shivers just thinking about what would happen if the two met. Who would even win that battle? The black hole, right? I mean, it has to be. Let's find out.
A black hole is on a collision course with our sun. And there's nothing left for you to do except sit back and watch the destruction of our entire solar system. How exactly would this epic collision unfold? How would this black hole end up in our planetary neighborhood? And what would it be like to witness all this from Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the sun collided with a black hole. A black hole is not much different than any other object that has mass, except it's dense, really dense. All the matter it possesses is compressed to an infinitely small point at its center, called a singularity. Most black holes are the remnants of massive stars. And just like the stars they used to be, black holes have a strong gravitational pull. The more matter compressed into its singularity, the stronger the gravity. There could be as many as 40 quintillion black holes in the observable universe. Many are located at the centers of their galaxies, like Sagittarius A star, the closest known black hole to us. It resides right in the center of the Milky Way. But black holes could also go rogue. After an extreme event like a collision between two galaxies, a black hole can break free and start to wander. There could be 12 of these rogue black holes in our galaxy alone, and one could be headed toward the sun right now. If a wandering black hole were headed toward our solar system, it would first reach the Oort cloud. That's the sphere of icy objects surrounding the solar system, 2 light years away from us. As soon as a black hole came too close, the icy bodies in this region would be ejected from their orbits. You wouldn't be able to see the black hole for yourself until it reached the ice giants, Neptune and Uranus. Looking through a powerful telescope, you could see the gases being pulled away from these planets. All the gases and dust torn from Neptune and Uranus would form a region around the black hole known as an accretion disk. This superheated collection of gas and dust would orbit the black hole, making it visible. As it continued on its destructive path, you'd witness Jupiter and Saturn meet a similar fate. You'd be able to see with your own naked eye these gas giants disappearing from our night sky. Rocky inner planets like Mars, Venus, and Mercury would also be sucked into the black hole and destroyed into nothingness as you watched in horror. Only Earth would be spared. Not really, of course. I just wouldn't want you to miss out on your front row ticket to the destruction of the solar system. As the black hole approached our sun, you might think it would swallow it in one blazing gulp. No, instead, the strong gravitational pull would begin to pull matter from the sun, just like a strand being pulled from a ball of yarn. Huge portions of gas would be ripped away from it, and they would spin around the black hole, joining the accretion disk formed by the gas and dust of all our neighboring planets. This tearing apart of the sun would keep going until our star no longer existed. What's left behind would be nothing more than a gas cloud. Only the very end of the tail of this cloud might be able to escape the fate of being pulled into the black hole. As the sun's matter was being absorbed, lethal amounts of ultraviolet and X-ray radiation would be released in fiery explosions. This radiation would be hurled right in your direction, back on Earth. You wouldn't know the ultimate fate of the sun for 8 minutes. That's how long the light would take to reach us, but instead of the light source of our solar system disappearing entirely right away, the black hole itself could become extremely bright. Possibly trillions of times brighter than the sun. And with the sun swallowed up, the stability of what's left in our solar system would be completely destroyed. An entirely new gravitational balance would need to be established. And in addition to all the lethal radiation raining down on Earth, extreme tidal forces would push and pull at the planet. This would cause massive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis. Eventually, Earth would crack into pieces. Or maybe, in the best case scenario, unceremoniously ejected from the solar system. Well, the reality is you and everything on our planet would be pulled right into the accretion disk, along with all the other matter in our solar system.
Wow, what a hot episode, don't you think? We've just seen what happens when cosmic forces turn against us, when the very things that sustain life become the catalysts for its end. But not all existential threats come from space. Some of the deadliest dangers to humanity rise from within our bodies, spreading in silence until it's too late. Throughout history, plagues and diseases have wiped out millions of people. And while we've conquered many of these diseases, one has continued to stump us for centuries: cancer. According to the World Health Organization, almost 20 million new cancer cases were reported in 2022 alone, leading to nearly 10 million deaths. And despite decades of medical advancements, cancer remains one of the most persistent killers of our time. Traditional treatments like chemotherapy and radiation can help, but they have major downsides. They harm healthy cells, cause harsh side effects, and sometimes cancer cells can become resistant to them. Well, that's where today's sponsor, Onco-Innovations, comes in. This Canadian-based company is leading the charge in the fight against cancer, with groundbreaking technology that specifically targets solid tumors while preventing cancer cells from repairing themselves. Their next-generation PNKP inhibitors work by blocking a key enzyme that cancer cells rely on for DNA repair, making them far more vulnerable to radiation therapy. Basically, they trap cancer cells in their broken state, making it easier to eliminate them for good. Unlike conventional treatments, Onco's technology has been proven effective both as a standalone treatment and in combination with radiation and chemotherapy. This means higher precision, fewer side effects, and a better chance at beating the disease. And in recent studies, Onco's technology successfully prevented regeneration of cancer cells, offering new hope for millions of people battling this devastating illness. Onco-Innovations is still in its early stages, but the progress they've made so far is remarkable. If they can successfully bring this technology to market, they could revolutionize cancer treatment and save countless lives. Click the link in the description to see how Onco is pushing the boundaries of modern medicine and bringing new hope to cancer patients worldwide. You know, cancer is just one of many silent killers threatening humanity. Other microscopic threats lurk in the shadows. What happens if the tools we rely on to fight infections, like antibiotics, stop working? Well, we're about to find out. Hey, welcome to another episode of What If? We've got a sick lineup of videos for you today. No, Tony Hawk isn't going to be grinding on anything. We're talking about the kind of sick that can grind you down and send you off to bed to wonder, what if I had just washed my hands before eating that sandwich? In our first story, we peer into a microscopic nightmare. You unwittingly become an all-you-can-eat buffet for tiny organisms when we ask, what if you were eaten by bacteria? And as if being devoured inside and out by a deadly infection wasn't bad enough, you'd be left to fend for yourself when we ask, what if antibiotics stopped working? How would we handle a world where our medical miracles become obsolete, making even minor infections life-threatening once again? And we'll ponder how different our lives would be without the wonder drugs that have extended human life past our 40s. You'd be amazed at how one accidental discovery can change the course of human history when we ask, what if we never discovered antibiotics? And finally, for all you hygiene rebels out there, cool guys, brace yourself for more funky facts about what happens when you let your body's ecosystem run wild. You might think twice about skipping that daily rinse when we break down what happens when you don't shower for a month. For now, we're about to go from our body being a petri dish to becoming the main course for hungry, deadly microbes. Get ready for a gut-wrenching journey when we ask, what if you were eaten by bacteria?
Family of a Connecticut man says their dad is fighting a flesh-eating bacteria.
That's right. They say he recently had his leg amputated above the knee after multiple unsuccessful surgeries.
According to the Florida Department of Health, there were 42 cases last year. 9 people died.
Hey, you okay? You don't look so hot.
I'm sick.
Let's see. Sore throat? Check. Fever? Check. Flesh-eating bacteria? Uh-oh. You might want to have a seat. This is going to be a doozy. You've become a walking buffet for an out-of-control bacteria, and it's trying to eat you alive from the inside out. What happens if it eats you completely? Are you gonna die? And is there any way to stop it? This is What If, and here's what would happen if you were eaten by bacteria. Bacteria in the human body isn't always an insidious infection. In fact, we actually need bacteria to survive. The bacteria floating around inside your body outnumber your human body cells by a hefty 10 to 1. The good bacteria mostly live inside your gut, breaking down food and absorbing nutrients. The trade-off is that for every bit of good that bacteria can do for us, they can also be pathogens, which can lead to infection, sickness, or sometimes even death. For this show, we've decided that you have bad bacteria. And I mean really bad bacteria. Flesh-eating disease bad. In fact, you've managed to contract the ultimate bad bacteria, necrotizing fasciitis. If you look here, and you know what, I'm not even going to show it to you. It's that bad. But I feel like I have to give it to you straight, so here's what you can expect. After the bacteria enters your body, it rapidly reproduces. Then it emits toxins and enzymes that damage your fascia and soft tissue. To make matters worse, the bacteria can shield itself from your immune system. This bacteria is not messing around. In the early stages of a flesh-eating disease, you'll feel like you have the flu. I'm talking about nausea, fever, pain from inflammation. This typically happens within 24 hours of being infected. Next, you'll feel even more pain near a wound or opening in your skin. It doesn't look too bad, right? Well, here's the bad news. It hurts a lot more than it looks. And it only gets worse. In about 3 days, the nastiness really starts. The wound or infected area will become swollen, and it may have a purplish rash which turns into blisters filled with a foul-smelling dark fluid.
No, don't you start doing that. No, you're gonna make...
The tissue will become discolored, and it may start to become flaky and peel. This means the tissue has bitten the dust. On day 5, your blood pressure will drop severely. You may go into toxic shock, pass out, and even become septic. Then, your organs will probably fail as a complication of the disease. And if you're not treated in time, that's it for you. But let's say you get to the hospital before the disease really chowed down on you. What sort of treatment could stop this horrific feast? Well, the 1-2 punch of antibiotics and surgery to remove dead tissue, for starters. Doctors may also prescribe medications to raise your blood pressure, and they may give you hyperbaric oxygen therapy to preserve what healthy tissues you have left. You may need cardiac monitoring, breathing aids, blood transfusions, and intravenous immunoglobulin to help your body fight the infection. And in extreme cases, you may need to have a body part amputated. Yeesh. Okay, so you have a chance of making it out of this in one piece, but here's the problem. Many bacteria are becoming more resistant to antibiotics. In many diseases, including necrotizing fasciitis, antibiotics are not always enough to stop the bacteria. This means we have to get creative and come up with new ways of treating dangerous diseases without relying on antibiotics. So, could we fight fire with fire? Scientists from Imperial College London and Nottingham University Medical School are trying to do just that. The research teams are testing predatory bacteria to see if they'll treat infections. This means introducing other bacteria that will consume the original intruder in order to decrease infection and help the immune system. The circle of bacterial life, I guess. So, if you find yourself in this nightmarish situation, the best thing you can do is to stay on top of it and see a doctor immediately. Early diagnosis and treatment is the key to being saved from flesh-eating bacteria. If you don't, flesh-eating bacteria isn't going to wait around for you to make a decision.
Hopefully you never find yourself on the menu for these voracious microbes because, as we just learned, these bacteria are becoming harder to treat thanks to antibiotic resistance. As scary as that seems, the reality is that antibiotic resistance seems likely to spread to other infectious diseases. What will things be like if eventually resistance renders these once miraculous life-saving drugs totally useless? How would we manage to survive in a world where our strongest weapons against our tiniest but deadliest enemies fail us completely? Get ready for a sobering look at a potential post-antibiotic era when we ask, what if antibiotics stopped working?
If you're watching this right now, you've probably used antibiotics at some point in your life. But did you really need to? The Centers for Disease Control claims that 1 in 3 antibiotic prescriptions are unnecessary. Unnecessary antibiotics cause the body to build up a resistance to those drugs. That's just one of the reasons why antibiotics are becoming ineffective, and why deadly bacterial infections are getting harder to treat. So what happens when antibiotics finally fail us? Does modern medicine die along with them? What happens to life expectancy? And would you ever leave the house again? This is What If, and here's what would happen if bacteria became antibiotic resistant. Prior to the 20th century, your average life expectancy at birth would have been 47 years. But after Sir Alexander Fleming accidentally discovered penicillin, the birth of modern antibiotics increased life expectancy by at least 20 years. The celebration was short-lived. Antibiotics have only been around for 70 years, and already we risk going back a century. That's because antimicrobial resistance is on the rise. Bacteria are evolving organisms, and like all evolving organisms, bacteria follow a process of natural selection. As bacteria mutate, they develop resistant genes, which are passed along in subsequent mutations. This bacteria 2.0, if you will, spreads to different hosts, passing through humans, animals, air, water, or soil. We have an antibiotic for bacteria 1, but it doesn't work on 2.0, and now 2.0 is everywhere. You see the problem? Over the past 30 years, we simply developed new antibiotics to replace the old ones. But now that antimicrobial resistance has become a lot more complex, quick cures are harder to find. These days, in the US, roughly 250,000 Americans die each year from bacterial infections that were once curable by antibiotics. But as more bacteria becomes resistant to antibiotics, the stats only get worse. When antibiotics are finally rendered impotent, 1 in 9 skin infections will kill you. Be careful when you shave and avoid paper at all costs.
Even the smallest cut can get infected. Naturally, this increases the risk of any kind of surgery, and on top of that, pregnancy. If you didn't think cancer could get any worse, think again. Treatments like chemotherapy weaken your immune system, making you vulnerable to infection, which is typically treated with antibiotics. But now what? With the rise of antimicrobial resistance, we risk returning to a time when anything from a paper cut to a handshake to an open cough could kill you. A super-resistant form of tuberculosis has been reported in over 100 countries, and we're running out of treatment options. We may end up reverting to the pre-antibiotics era treatment of prescribing fresh air. So how do we prevent this antibiotic apocalypse? Fortunately, governments around the world are passing laws to prevent the misuse of antibiotics. That means no more prescriptions for viral infections like the common cold. Farmers are also being banned from giving livestock antibiotics to boost their growth. In the realm of science and technology, new solutions like nanochips are being developed to target bacterial cells one by one. Of course, you too can play an important role by simply maintaining basic hygiene. So remember to wash your hands thoroughly. The rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria is no small threat, and it's clear we need to rethink our approach to these microscopic menaces before we face a world where our medical miracles become obsolete. Now, consider a world without one of mankind's greatest accidents. What would life be like if we never stumbled upon the bacteria-fighting power of antibiotics? Get ready for a great big look at a teeny tiny topic when we ask, what if we never discovered antibiotics?
Herbs, honey, moldy bread, animal feces? In ancient times, these were the go-to remedies for disease and infection. We've come a long way since then. Or have we? Since its discovery in 1928, penicillin has saved millions of lives and is hailed as the first antibiotic to be used medically. In 2010, more than 7.3 billion standard units of penicillin were consumed worldwide. Not bad for a medicine that was discovered completely by accident. So, what if penicillin had never been discovered? What would a world without antibiotics look like? Would we all be wearing masks? Would medical care be more luxurious and exclusive? Would the world's population be as big as it is today? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we never discovered antibiotics. In September of 1928, Alexander Fleming returned from a summer vacation to his London laboratory, where he noticed a strange growth in an old petri dish that would forever change the world. It appeared that, in Fleming's absence, a colony of mold had sprouted and started dissolving the bacteria that was growing in the dish. Penicillium notatum was studied, developed, and purified over the next 10 years, and in 1942, it was used successfully to treat Ann Miller for a deadly infection following a miscarriage. Since then, penicillin has had a variety of uses, treating life-threatening diseases, preventing infections after surgery, and reducing the number of deaths and amputations in every major conflict since World War II. But since this miracle cure was a fluke discovery, what if it had simply been overlooked? Penicillin isn't the world's only antibiotic, but its discovery almost uniquely inspired the search for more. For example, in 1940, soil microbiologist Selman Waxman published his research on how microorganisms in soil could prevent the growth of infectious bacteria. The findings led Waxman and his colleagues to develop several important antibiotics, such as streptomycin, which can treat tuberculosis, plague, and rat bite fever. But Waxman's work came from his fascination of Fleming's discovery and the research that followed. This means that without penicillin, other crucial antibiotics would have been left undiscovered for some time. Penicillin may have saved over 200 million lives since its invention, but if you think our lives without antibiotics would be much shorter and more painful, hold the violin for just another beat. The reality is that our lives might not be so different after all. During the mid-1930s, a class of synthetic drugs known as sulfonamides or sulfa drugs were proven to fight bacteria and cure infection. They were the first miracle drugs before being eclipsed by penicillin and other antibiotics over the following decade. It's likely then that without penicillin, we would have simply come to rely on sulfa drugs instead. The scientific and medical communities would have certainly developed stronger and more sophisticated sulfonamides to deal with more complex diseases as they evolve. And yet, we would also still face the same problems that currently threaten antibiotics today. Even as Fleming celebrated his success, he was cautious. In accepting his Nobel Prize in 1945, Fleming warned that the misuse of penicillin could breed a bacterial resistance to it. In other words, as we're realizing more and more today, penicillin as a miracle cure could soon be rendered ineffective.
It's hard to imagine a world where simple infections could be life-threatening. Let's be thankful for the medical advances we often take for granted and hope that science can keep pace with antibiotic resistance. Okay, finally, for all you hygiene rebels out there, we're about to get down and extremely dirty with our last question. What would happen if you decided to skip your daily shower for an entire month? Well, brace yourself and hold your nose when we ask, what happens if you don't shower for a month?
Every morning, or every night, before going out, definitely after the big game. For most people, showering is routine, but for some, it's religion.
When are you getting out? I'm not! I'll see you later, buddy!
But if lots of showering makes you feel divine, your body might be the real miracle worker. This is What If, and here's what would happen if you didn't shower for a month. The average human spends more than a year of their life in the shower, and according to most dermatologists, that's way too much. But how else are you supposed to keep looking and smelling your best? While it's no secret that scrubbing removes dirt, sweat, and harmful bacteria, it also strips away natural fats and lipids that hydrate your skin. The more you shower, the less time your body has to replenish this healthy layer of moisturizing bacteria. So if you stop showering, will your body just clean itself? It would be healthier for you, but not for everyone else. Once you give up showering, you'll start to see the difference in as little as 3 days. Your skin will be noticeably drier and your hair greasier. One of the first signs of progress will be that your hair will stay in place when combed back. No product needed. After going 5 days without showering, you should probably start warning people before you enter a room. Then again, they'll smell you coming. If you're doing this challenge without deodorant, then put the savings towards a t-shirt budget. Sweat stains will be so bad that your shirts will be one wear and throw out items. After 10 days, you can throw out your comb too. Your hair will be so greasy and matted that you won't be able to run a brush through it. Your scalp will be so itchy that any relief would be welcome. But at the same time, any contact with your head will no doubt show how bad your dandruff problem is. By day 20, it's hard to believe you're human. Friends and family no longer acknowledge your existence, and you can barely stand your own smell, let alone your appearance. Days and nights of scratching your dry, itchy skin will be obvious from the festering sores on your body. And if you thought you were past getting acne, congratulations, you're 13 again. You're ready to give up, but just wait a little longer. By the end of the month, after only rinsing with water, the layer of healthy bacteria that your body produces will be completely restored. The acne goes away on its own, and your skin will probably start looking better than it did when you were showering. But will it have been worth it? Probably not. You still smell terrible. While sweat doesn't actually emit any odor, it does produce fatty acids and protein that your skin bacteria feed on. And it's their metabolic process that gives off that nasty smell. So yeah, keep using soap. Keep showering.
All right, as we wrap up our exploration of bacterial invasions, antibiotic resistance, medical history, and personal hygiene, it's clear that the microscopic world has a massive impact on our lives. From the medicines we rely on to the daily habits that keep us healthy, we've certainly taken a journey today through some eye-opening scenarios. Hey, welcome back to What If? Today, we'll push the limits of reality as we look into 4 destructive questions that will test your disaster preparedness and help you craft a better escape plan. Picture an ocean wave, taller than the Empire State Building, racing toward you as you stand helplessly on the shore. How would the east coast of North America fare in nature's ultimate surfing competition? Next, imagine the world's hottest jacuzzi meets Earth's iciest cold plunge. Now crank that up to 11. What kind of chaos ensues when the extreme heat of a volcano collides with a frigid blast of liquid nitrogen? Then, have you ever dreamed of finding a shortcut to the other side of the planet? Well, it's not all it's cracked up to be. We'll tell you about that shortcut and all the challenges it presents. Prepare to be shaken to the core. And forget about run-of-the-mill tornadoes. What happens when wind and fire team up to create nature's most terrifying spin class? But first up, from Boston to Miami, how would 14 states and the 124 million people who call them home make out against a wave that makes Surf's Up look like a kiddie pool? Well, get ready for a wet and wild ride when a mega tsunami hits the United States East Coast.
In 6 hours, you, your government, and 124 million other people across 14 states will be tested by the greatest disaster to ever hit the U.S. East Coast. A great wave 1,000 meters tall, moving towards you at 1,000 kilometers per hour. And that's only the beginning. Boston, New York, Philly, D.C., Miami, all underwater. And you? This is What If, and here's what would happen if a mega tsunami hit the US East Coast. Unlike most tsunamis that are triggered by tectonic activity, mega tsunamis are caused by sudden impact. A huge chunk of debris, possibly a meteor, smashes the water, creating a huge wave which might reach thousands of meters high. The initial superwave would set off a chain reaction of smaller waves in all directions. But by smaller, we really mean they'd be about 100 meters high, instead of 1,000. Depending on the size and location of the impact and the speed of the waves racing towards you, you may get a few hours of warning. But will that be enough time? Welcome to La Palma, one of the 7 main Canary Islands, home to 81,000 people, and a giant, scary volcano. Suppose it erupts, and the eruption is big enough that it triggers a massive landslide. Massive enough to send 1 billion tons of rock sliding into the ocean, causing a mega tsunami. The initial wave is 914 meters high. It surges upwards and outwards, setting off a chain reaction of deadly waves in all directions. In 6 hours, a series of 30-meter waves will batter the American East Coast. Ramming speed? 900 kilometers per hour. One of the 7 deep ocean assessment and reporting buoys floating along the Atlantic coast will undoubtedly register this mega displacement of water, giving the U.S. Tsunami Warning Center time to alert anyone who might be in danger. The only problem is, that's 38% of the American population. The entire U.S. East Coast would be affected, putting 14 states and 124 million people, including key members of the government, at risk. If you can't make it out in time, then climb. In major cities, the newest and tallest skyscrapers would be the safest places to go. And your own safety would be entirely your responsibility, since emergency services wouldn't really be able to take action until the onslaught was over. In the best case scenario, you've managed to evade the disaster completely. Your family is safe, but your home, not so much. Worse, you're on the roof of a skyscraper, safe, with a group of survivors waiting for a helicopter to come pick you up, which might take a very long time. But in the worst case scenario, the death toll would be staggering. The economic impact easily costing billions, if not trillions of dollars. It will take decades to rebuild, and yet, is it wrong to suggest that we might have gotten off easy? How much worse would it have been without the 6 hours of advance notice? That's right, you owe a big thank you to these super smart boys monitoring the coast, keeping you safe and dry so that you can rest easy.
That's a sobering look at the power of water. From skyscraper shelters to economic tsunamis, trust me when I tell you, a mega tsunami is no day at the beach. All right now, let's upset all the dads out there and turn up the heat while we crank the AC with our extreme science fair project. Will we create the ultimate lava lamp or trigger something far more explosive? Prepare for some serious temperature tantrums as we pour a pool of liquid nitrogen into a volcano.
What would happen if you dumped one of the world's coldest liquids into the boiling, volatile mouth of a volcano? Would it freeze all the lava inside? Could it cause a massive explosion? Or maybe trigger a major natural disaster? This is What If, and here's what would happen if we dumped liquid nitrogen into a volcano. First things first, if you're planning to put on your protective gear and dump a bucket of liquid nitrogen into a volcano, you're going to be disappointed. Before you could even get close to the mouth of the volcano, the liquid nitrogen would evaporate due to the extreme heat. So, you'd have to be a little more creative. One way you could do it would be to fill a bunch of cannonballs with liquid nitrogen and launch them all into the volcano at once. That would definitely start a reaction inside the volcano, but you probably wouldn't want to stick around to see it. Now, before you go mixing these two crazy things together, let's get to know them a little better. On the one hand, you have volcanoes, which are basically giant holes in the Earth's crust. They're full of boiling hot magma that can erupt outwards in the form of lava. Actually, boiling is an understatement because lava can reach temperatures of up to 1200 degrees. And on the other hand, you have liquid nitrogen, the smoky-looking substance that most people have heard of but don't know much about. It can be as cold as minus 210 degrees. And when it warms up and becomes a gas, it expands to 175 times its volume. If we want the liquid nitrogen to have a noticeable impact on the volcano, we're going to need millions of liters of the stuff. But no big deal, large masses of liquid nitrogen can be produced commercially, and all we'd need to transport it would be vented and insulated containers to prevent pressure buildup. The really hard part would come when you'd try to put those millions of liters of liquid nitrogen into the volcano. That brings us back to the cannonballs. The idea is that you'd fill each cannonball with liquid nitrogen and blast it into the mouth of the volcano. When the cannonball melts due to the extreme heat, it will release the liquid nitrogen into the magma. Yeah, we realize this is getting ridiculous, but hey, you knew what you were signing up for. Once a few cannonballs reached the magma, there would be a deadly brew of heated nitrogen gas floating its way up and out of the volcano, gobbling up all the oxygen around it as it rises. The liquid nitrogen might be able to freeze the surface lava quickly enough to form a crust, but that still wouldn't be a very exciting effect for you watching from outside the volcano. Now, if you were somehow able to line up thousands of nitrogen cannons and continuously fire copious amounts of liquid nitrogen into the volcano, then things would start to get interesting. With this amount of liquid nitrogen, more than just the surface lava would start to freeze, and immense pressure would build up underneath. Beneath the mouth of the volcano, there would be kilometers of lava slowly making its way to the surface. Its natural flow would be stopped by the frozen top layer. All that pressure would need to go somewhere. The surface lava would, at this stage, look like a crumbling black sidewalk, slowly being elevated as lava pools under it. Finally, explosions would begin. The volcano would erupt,
sending jets of atmospheric pollutants skyward. Pollutants that could affect any living creature in the vicinity. Or the volcano might even explode, causing an earthquake. Essentially, you'd be creating an induced eruption. A blocked vent is what causes volcanic eruptions, but generally, those blocks are natural. So, maybe you should just keep the liquid nitrogen far away from volcanoes and put it to better uses, like culinary experiments.
Hey, now that is a cool look at a hot topic.
From nitrogen cannonballs to induced eruptions, it's clear that mixing volcanoes and liquid nitrogen is a recipe for disaster. I'll stick to the old baking soda and vinegar trick for my volcano experiments. All right, next up, it's time to take the ultimate shortcut through our planet. Imagine hopping on a train that goes straight through Earth's core. What wonders and terrors will you encounter on this subterranean express? Well, find out as we drill a hole right through Earth.
You know what might be the best way to travel to the other side of the world? By drilling your way right through the planet. This would be the journey of a lifetime, if you don't mind riding through molten rock and brushing pressure. What would you see along the way? How long would this journey through Earth take? And how would a gravity train keep you alive? The heat is on and you're under all sorts of pressure. This is What If. And here's what would happen if you drilled a hole through Earth. Imagine going from Argentina to China in less than an hour. All you need is a hole straight through the Earth. But drilling this hole would be the hardest part of the endeavor. You could just handle it supervillain style and fire a laser at Earth. But today, we'll be taking a trip through the biggest hole we've drilled in the history of our planet. Sit tight because this is gonna be one heck of a ride. The first thing you'd need to do would be to drill the deepest hole humanity has ever imagined. We've already drilled holes through the Earth on What If, so you know what to do. First, you'd need a really big drill, and it would take a few years to complete this project. You'd be working in enormous heat and pressure, and it would increase the closer you get to Earth's center. But when the hole is finished, you'd have your very own gravity tunnel, a gateway between one side of the Earth and the other. I'll explain how it would work in a moment. Next, you'd need to find yourself a comfy vehicle to get you through the Earth. If you just jumped into the depths of the Earth, you'd burn to a crisp and crushed into a pancake. So, hop on the gravity train. This train would accelerate using only the force of gravity, and it would protect you from the searing heat and extreme pressure. The first leg of the journey would take you through Earth's crust. Depending on where you begin your trip, the crust can be 5 to 70 kilometers thick, and amazingly, it only makes up 1% of the entire Earth. You'd start your journey feeling pretty carefree, and at 20 meters below the surface, you'd be at the same level as subways or the Paris catacombs. But let's go a little further down. At 2.5 kilometers, you'd be at the same depth as the deepest fossil ever discovered. And once you get to 3.6 kilometers, you'd be able to see the devil worm. It's the deepest living animal ever found. Is it just me, or is it getting hot? Believe it or not, some people are working at this depth. The Mponeng gold mine in South Africa is so far down that the heat is an issue. And believe me, you wouldn't enjoy the 60 degrees Celsius temperature down here. Then, gravity would take you further down. At 8.8 kilometers below the Earth's surface, you'd have traveled further than the height of Mount Everest. And at 11 kilometers underground, you'd be deeper than the Mariana Trench. At 12.26 kilometers, you would reach the same depth as the Kola Super Deep Borehole. It's the deepest hole we've ever dug. And now, you'd really feel the intense pressure on your body. At this depth, air pressure is 4,000 times the pressure at sea level. As you approach the end of the first part of this epic journey, you might get to see a plethora of gems. I'm talking about rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. They could be valuable souvenirs if you make it through to the other side of the Earth. And at 40 kilometers down, part 1 of your voyage would be behind you, or above you, depending on how you see it. Let's go onward to the second layer of Earth, the mantle. Most people think it has a lava-like texture, but at this shallow depth, relatively speaking, it's rock solid. Only when you're deeper will it start becoming molten. This would be the longest part of your journey. That's because the mantle makes up an impressive 84% of Earth's volume. The mantle is about 2,900 kilometers thick. You wouldn't see much inside it, except for one dazzling exception. At this depth, the enormous pressure and heat forms diamonds. They make their way to the Earth's surface through volcanic activity, and that's where we humans find them. But you are lucky and find them at their birthplace. Don't be shy, grab a few. As you arrive about 410 kilometers below the surface, things would start to get weird. The mantle's rock would be molten hot, but instead of it staying in its melted state, the mantle would turn hard. That's because of the extreme pressure. Moving on to the bottom of the mantle, a mere 1,000 kilometers down, you would experience the force of mantle blobs. These are supercharged plumes of hot rock, and if they surfaced, they would become devastating supervolcanoes. No need to say, you'd feel extremely hot. You'd be almost halfway through the Earth, and that must mean you're approaching the outer core. At depths of 3,000 kilometers, the outer core is made of iron and nickel. And boy, would it be hot! The temperatures around you would range from 4,500 to 5,500 degrees Celsius. At 5,000 kilometers below the surface, you'd reach the Earth's inner core. This giant solid iron sphere has a mind-boggling temperature of 5,200 degrees Celsius, and the pressure is a crushing 3.6 million times more than at sea level. Let's hope your gravity train would be up to the challenge at these extreme temperatures and pressures. I didn't read the manual, but I'm sure you'll be just fine. Finally, you would make it to the halfway point of your subterranean voyage. Right at the center of Earth, the mass would be equal in all directions, and you'd get to experience zero gravity. But remember, that was just half the journey. You'll have to do that all over again, but in reverse to finish your trip. This journey would put you under a lot of pressure. It would make you hot, most likely uncomfortable, and rich. You did collect the diamonds, didn't you? Now, how long do you think it would take to get from one side of the Earth to the other? Okay, it's time I told you more about the gravity tunnel. This is a theoretical passageway through the Earth, or simply a hole through the Earth, as I like to call it. If it's created correctly, you could get from one side of the Earth to the other in about 42 minutes using a gravity train. But as I mentioned before, traveling through the Earth would be the easy part. It's the drilling that would be hard. If we could engineer such a feat, it would revolutionize travel. And you'd have one short but epic journey.
Yeah, and I thought driving to work in my city was bad. That is a high-pressure commute. But from the devil worms to the diamond mines, the sights you'd see on a journey through our planet would be phenomenal. Still, I think I gained a new appreciation for flying after watching that video. Okay, finally, let's heat things up even more. If you thought twisters were terrifying, well, imagine what happens when they team up with fire. Actually, no need to imagine it because we're about to take you into one.
Ashes and smoke cover the sky. Your hometown is sieged by massive wildfires. You rush to escape, unaware that behind you, the wind and the heat have created a monster. A spinning tower of flames. In a few moments, it'll swallow everything around it, including you. What can a fire tornado lift? What will its blistering temperatures do to you? And how could you possibly escape one of them? This is What If, and here's what would happen if you were sucked into a fire tornado. Technically speaking, a fire-nado isn't really a tornado. Tornadoes extend from thunderstorms, so their vortex is in the sky. The vortex of a fire tornado, on the other hand, is formed by hot air on the ground. To do this, fire-nados need an intense source of heat, like a fierce wildfire. The air warms up, the surrounding flames begin to rise, and a low-pressure area forms around it. This causes even more air to rush in and fill the void. This column of hell then starts to rotate, pulling in embers, ash, and flaming hot gases. Ta-da! You've got yourself a fire tornado! Not that it's any good news. Sure, they look epic, but there's a long list of reasons why they're nicknamed fire devils. So, how big and strong can a fire-nado be? Fire tornadoes only last for about 20 minutes. They're also just a few meters wide. That's because height is more their thing. They can extend 10 to 50 meters into the air. And the hotter the fire, the stronger they get. Some wildfires have produced fire-nados over 1,000 meters tall. And their strength? Well, they can have wind speeds of over 193 kilometers per hour, all the way up to 240 kilometers per hour. They've been seen lifting all-terrain vehicles and a house with people still in it. Fire devils live short lives, but they all go out. And one of these is about to do some serious damage to your town. Now you'd be facing a scorching tornado taller than the tallest building in the world. And for the 20 minutes that it'll be around, this fire devil will spark havoc on the streets. Around you, roofs will be torn off houses, trees would be pulled out of the ground, and cars lifted from the pavement like toys. You'd need to duck and cover because smaller objects are now missiles darting through the air. Oh, and whatever the hot winds haven't snatched up could still burst into flames. Let's hope you don't live near a gas station. Things could also get quite dire directly above you. This fire-nado could raise a colossal plume of smoke 5 kilometers into the air. If afterward you hear thunder, it wouldn't be your imagination. The intense heat could form a pyrocumulonimbus cloud, a thunderstorm cloud that can fuel the firestorm with dry lightning and by further spreading the hot embers. And guess what these are also known to generate? Yeah, more fire-nados. So what would be your best bet at surviving? Run like your life depends on it. Because it does. Or better yet, find a car and put the pedal to the metal. Don't even think about hiding in a basement unless you want to end up trapped inside a burning building. Flying would also be dangerous. The firestorm could cause risky turbulence. Whatever you choose, you better do it fast. A fire tornado can be especially dangerous because of how unpredictable it can be. It could turn and change directions at any second. Fail to escape and suddenly you'd be lifted off the ground and sucked straight into its fiery belly. Here, temperatures can reach nearly 1100 degrees Celsius. Well, your skin triggers a pain response at 44 degrees Celsius. Exposing it to anything above 48 degrees Celsius for just 5 minutes can result in third-degree burns. Furiously spin at over 1100 degrees Celsius for almost 20 minutes, and the char will go beyond that. Your muscles would be cooked beyond well done, and your fat would sizzle and bubble. Firenadoes like 'em crispy. By the time the firenado pulls you up to cooler air, you would have experienced 6th degree burns. Yeah, only your charred bones would enjoy the relief of this cool breeze. And your blackened remains will hover, for a moment, over acres of scorched land and structures, where hundreds of people have also met your fate. Whoa, that turned out a bit dark, didn't it?
You could say that was a scorching look at one of nature's most terrifying phenomena. Between the flying cars and the pyrocumulonimbus clouds, it's clear that fire tornadoes are best enjoyed from afar. Oh, and I'd suggest you all invest in some fireproof running shoes. As we wrap up, I think it's clear that while Mother Nature may be beautiful, she still has some seriously destructive tricks up her sleeve. Thanks for joining us on this disaster-filled adventure, and until next time, keep asking, what if? And maybe update your emergency preparedness kit.